Have you ever stopped to wonder why the people who apologize the most seem to command the least respect? Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you apologized? And did it actually strengthen your position? Or did something subtle shift in the power dynamic? We've all been taught since childhood that saying "I'm sorry" is a mark of maturity, a sign of emotional intelligence and proof of our good character. But what if I told you that this widely accepted wisdom is perhaps one of the most destructive lies you've been sold your entire life? What if those two simple words, "I'm sorry," are actually costing you far more than you realize every time they leave your lips? Has this ever happened to you? You apologize for something minor, perhaps taking up space in a crowded elevator, speaking up in a meeting, or even for someone else bumping into you, and afterward you feel a strange diminishment, as if you've somehow made yourself smaller in the world. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover about the psychology of apologies might fundamentally change how you navigate every relationship in your life. Throughout history, power dynamics have been studied by the greatest minds, but none perhaps more shrewdly than Niccolo Machiavelli. This Renaissance political philosopher watched as leaders who constantly sought forgiveness, who readily apologized to appease others, eventually lost everything they had: their authority, their respect, and ultimately, their power. Meanwhile, those who maintained their stance, who refused to diminish themselves through unnecessary contrition, preserved their influence and expanded their control. What Machiavelli understood, and what most of us have forgotten, is that each apology you offer isn't just words floating into the ether. It's a transaction, a power transaction. And in this exchange, you're handing over pieces of your personal authority to someone else, inviting them to step on fragments of your dignity that you've willingly scattered at their feet. Think of your power as a finite resource. Every time you say "I'm sorry" when you've done nothing wrong, you're not building a bridge. You're digging your own grave, one shovelful of respect at a time. You're training others to see you as someone who is perpetually wrong, constantly at fault, eternally less than. And human nature responds predictably to this signal. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What makes this revelation so powerful is that it challenges everything you've been taught about interpersonal dynamics. The very thing you've been doing to strengthen your relationships may be the exact behavior that's undermining your standing in every room you enter. And as we continue to explore this concept, you'll begin to recognize patterns in your own life where your apologies haven't healed wounds. They've created vulnerabilities that others have exploited, perhaps without even realizing it themselves. So ask yourself now, how many times did you apologize today, this week? And more importantly, how many of those apologies were truly necessary? Because what happens next in this hidden psychological battleground might be the key to reclaiming the power you never realized you were giving away. Let me make something perfectly clear. I'm not suggesting you should never acknowledge your mistakes. That would be absurd. What I'm revealing is the hidden distinction between strategic acknowledgement and desperate apology. There's a world of difference between saying, "This outcome wasn't what we planned, here's what we're doing next," and saying, "I'm so sorry, this is all my fault, please forgive me." One maintains your dignity and authority while addressing the situation. The other surrenders your power completely. This distinction is what separates those who command respect from those who beg for it. The mindset transformation begins when you recognize that acknowledging reality doesn't require self-diminishment. The strongest leaders in history understood this intuitively. They could address failures without prostrating themselves. If you found value in these Machiavellian insights about power dynamics, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm constantly revealing the uncomfortable truths that society hides from you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because the modern world we navigate is essentially a battlefield of competing interests, desires, and agendas. Every interaction carries stakes, whether in your career, relationships, or daily encounters with strangers. And on this battlefield, apologizing without strategy is like showing up without armor, weaponless and vulnerable. Think about it. You wouldn't enter a negotiation having already decided to give away your most valuable assets. You wouldn't start a game having predetermined that you'll deliberately lose points. Yet that's precisely what you're doing when you apologize unnecessarily. You're telegraphing weakness before the first move is even made. This revelation might feel uncomfortable because it challenges the narrative we've been fed that politeness always equals goodness. But behind the scenes of every unnecessary apology is a hidden truth about human nature that few are willing to acknowledge. What happens to your physical presence when you apologize? Watch yourself next time. Your spine curves, your shoulders roll forward, your voice drops, your eyes cast downward, you quite literally shrink. This isn't coincidence, it's your body's recognition of the energetic diminishment that's occurring. Every "I'm sorry" reduces the space you occupy in the world, not just metaphorically, but physically. This death of presence doesn't just affect how others see you, it fundamentally alters how you see yourself. Each apology reinforces a subconscious belief that you don't deserve to exist fully, that your impact on the world should be minimized, that your journey through life should leave the smallest footprint possible. The most dangerous impact of this habit isn't external, but internal. You begin to believe that you are someone who should be sorry for existing. Your decisions become timid, your voice hesitant, your ambitions modest. You start apologizing before you've even done anything. Sorry to bother you. Sorry to take up your time. Sorry for asking. And the world responds accordingly, not because people are malicious, but because we inevitably treat others according to how they present themselves. Your unnecessary apologies are like signposts telling everyone exactly how to treat you as someone whose presence requires justification. If any of this resonates with your experience, write "I claim my space" in the comments below, because recognizing this pattern is the first step in reclaiming the power you've been unknowingly surrendering. The energetic consequences of these apologies extend far beyond the moment they're uttered. Each time you diminish yourself through unnecessary contrition, you're not just affecting that single interaction, you're programming your entire being to operate from a position of inferiority. You're programming an entire way of moving through the world that signals to everyone around you that you are less than. The revelations about your physical body during apologies are particularly striking. Pay attention to yourself the next time those words leave your mouth. It's not just in your imagination. Your entire physiology shifts. Your spine, designed to be the pillar of your strength, actually curves inward. Your chest, which houses your heart and lungs, collapses as if trying to protect your vital organs from an incoming attack. Your voice, your primary tool of expression, drops to a whisper barely audible. And perhaps most telling of all, your eyes, windows to your soul, dart away, unable to witness your own surrender of power. These aren't coincidental movements. This is your body's wisdom communicating a profound truth. Apologizing when unnecessary is an act of self-harm. Your body knows what your conscious mind might not yet recognize, that you are literally shrinking your presence in the world, moment by moment, apology by apology. But the transformation goes even deeper than these physical manifestations. There's a spiritual contraction that occurs, a metaphysical diminishment that's harder to observe, but even more devastating in its impact. Your energy field, that invisible but palpable force that others can sense when you enter a room, begins to collapse inward. Your power evaporates like water under intense heat. Each unnecessary "I'm sorry" is essentially telling the universe, I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to take up space. My existence requires justification. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects that belief back to you through every interaction you have. The most insidious consequence of this pattern is that you gradually become invisible, not in the literal sense, of course, but in the ways that truly matter. People begin to look past you in meetings. Your ideas get attributed to others. Your boundaries get crossed without acknowledgement. Your needs go unaddressed. This invisibility isn't happening because you're inherently quiet or small. It's happening because you've been systematically apologizing for your very existence. You've been training every person you encounter that you are someone whose presence is optional, whose voice is dispensable, whose boundaries are suggestions rather than requirements. Behind the scenes of every human interaction is an unspoken negotiation of space, attention, and power. When you apologize unnecessarily, you're entering these negotiations having already conceded defeat. You're starting from a position of disadvantage that you've created yourself. The journey to reclaiming your power begins with this mindset shift. You have just as much right to exist, to speak, to occupy space as anyone else in this world. Perhaps even more so than those who demand apologies for your mere presence. If you've recognized yourself in this pattern and are ready to stop apologizing for existing, write "I reclaim my power" in the comments below. The hunger that your apologies create in others is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this dynamic. When you habitually apologize to someone, you're not actually satisfying their need for respect or resolution. You're creating an insatiable hunger inside them, a hunger for your submission. This profound insight reveals a darker dimension of human interaction that few personal development experts are willing to address. Consider the world we inhabit as a landscape of territories. Every person you encounter is, consciously or unconsciously, staking claims on physical, emotional, and psychological space. It's not malicious. It's simply human nature to expand into available territory. Your career, your relationships, your physical presence in a room, these are all territories that rightfully belong to you. But each time you apologize unnecessarily, you're essentially handing over a deed to your territory. You're saying, "This space that was mine, take it. I don't deserve it anyway." And people will take it. Not because they're evil, but because that's the fundamental exchange you've initiated. You've offered your territory, and they've simply accepted the offering. The awakening moment for many is recognizing that this surrender creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. You wonder why colleagues talk over you in meetings, why your opinions seem to carry less weight, why people consistently intrude upon your boundaries. The revelation is that through your pattern of constant apologies, you've literally drawn them a map and highlighted exactly where to step. You've trained them through consistent behavioral reinforcement that you will always yield. This training isn't something they're consciously aware of. It's happening at a primal, almost instinctual level of human interaction. The decision to view you as someone whose space can be invaded wasn't made in a boardroom or in a calculated moment. It was made through the culmination of dozens, perhaps hundreds, of micro moments where you apologized and they accepted. Perhaps the most confronting truth in this journey of self-discovery is what your constant apologies are actually signaling in the subconscious language of power dynamics. Every unnecessary "I'm sorry" is essentially a signal flare shooting into the sky, screaming, "I am prey, I am weak, I am beneath you, come, dominate me." And people respond to this signal not because they're predators, seeking victims, but because that's how the unspoken psychology of influence operates. Power naturally flows toward those who claim it and away from those who surrender it. This isn't malicious, it's mechanical. It's the hidden machinery of human interaction that operates whether we acknowledge it or not. Behind the scenes of every relationship, professional, personal, even casual, these dynamics are constantly at play. The impact of your habitual apologies extends far beyond the moment they're uttered. They're reshaping your entire social landscape, redrawing the boundaries of your influence, and ultimately determining your destiny through 1,000 tiny surrenders. Your transformation begins when you recognize that these patterns aren't fixed. They're created. And what has been created can be uncreated through conscious, deliberate choice in each moment. If you've been experiencing this pattern in your own life and are ready to reclaim your territory, write, "I defend my space," in the comments below. The wisdom of Machiavelli becomes particularly relevant when we consider how power and fear interact in the subtle dance of human relationships. He once observed that since love and fear can hardly exist together if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than to be loved. This insight cuts to the heart of why your apologies are causing such damage to your influence. When you constantly say, "I'm sorry," you're attempting to be loved, to be accepted, to be approved of, but at the devastating cost of respect. Don't miss out on more psychological revelations that transform your life. Subscribe now and join thousands of others who've stopped apologizing for their existence. Think deeply about the people in your life who command genuine respect. They likely aren't those who apologize most frequently. They're the ones who stand firmly in their truth, who occupy their space without constant justification, who acknowledge mistakes directly but without self-diminishment. They aren't seeking to be loved through submission. They're commanding respect through presence. The mindset shift here is revolutionary. Respect isn't earned through constant accommodation. It's established through boundaries, consistency, and self-regard. The uncomfortable truth is that many of your apologies aren't actually about accountability. They're about seeking approval, about trying to make others comfortable with your existence. And here's the devastating irony at the core of this pattern. By trying to make everyone comfortable through your apologies, you make yourself forgettable, erasable, irrelevant in their world. You become background noise, someone whose presence barely registers, because you've trained everyone that your existence requires justification. The profound revelation that transforms lives is this: making others comfortable isn't always virtuous. Sometimes it's an act of self-betrayal. Sometimes it's a sacrifice of your authentic power on the altar of others' convenience. Behind the scenes of your constant apologizing is often a deep-seated belief that others' comfort matters more than your dignity, that their ease is more important than your power. This journey toward reclaiming your authentic presence begins with a fundamental truth that many of us have forgotten. You have just as much right to exist, to occupy space, and to breathe the same air as anyone else in this world. Perhaps even more right if you're not actively trying to steal others' power through manipulation of their apologies. The universe did not make a mistake in creating you. Your presence here is not an error requiring constant justification. Your voice, your thoughts, your physical body taking up space, none of these are intrusions that warrant apology. They are your birthright. What's particularly liberating about this awakening is recognizing that strong people don't demand apologies from others for simply existing. They don't need others to shrink, so they can feel big. They don't require others' submission to validate their own power. Only the weak-spirited need constant reassurance of their dominance through others' apologies. So when you stop apologizing unnecessarily, you're not just reclaiming your own power. You're also revealing who around you has been feeding off your submission. You'll quickly discover which relationships were built on genuine mutual respect and which were sustained by your consistent self-diminishment. If you're ready to reclaim your rightful space in this world without apology, write "I exist unapologetically" in the comments below. Now let's explore what happens in others when you apologize to them, because this is where the dynamics become truly fascinating. When you offer someone your apology, you're not just giving them words, you're creating something inside them that they might not even be aware of, an insatiable hunger for more of your submission. This insight shakes the foundation of why we apologize in the first place. Think of your apology as handing someone the first taste of the most addictive substance in existence, power over another human being. That first hit, that first surrender, opens a neurological doorway that can never be fully closed again. When you say "I'm sorry" and diminish yourself, you're essentially offering them a position of superiority, of dominance, of control. And that feeling, it's intoxicating. The revelation here goes beyond simple psychology and into neurobiology. When you submit through an apology, the other person's brain actually releases dopamine, the same chemical responsible for the pleasure we feel when eating delicious food, having sex, or achieving a long-desired goal. They experience a literal high from your submission. Their brain registers, "I just won something. I'm superior. I have power." And winning feels incredible. Now, their brain wants to experience that feeling again, and again, and again. You've unintentionally activated their reward system, and you've positioned yourself as the supplier of this addictive neurochemical cocktail. Except here's the crucial difference between this and other addictions. You don't control the supply. It controls you. You become the unwitting dealer in a transaction where you're consistently losing. This creates a hidden pattern that manifests in your relationships in ways you might never have recognized before. Have you noticed that the people you apologize to most frequently seem to find more and more reasons to be offended by you? This isn't coincidence, it's conditioning at its most primal level. You've trained their brain that being upset with you leads to the reward of your submission. The profound insight here is that they don't even realize they're doing this. Their conscious mind genuinely believes they have legitimate complaints, but beneath the surface, their unconscious mind is running a simple program: get upset with this person. They apologize. I feel powerful. Repeat. Behind the scenes of this cycle is a fundamental truth about human nature that most personal development experts won't tell you. Power feels good. Having someone submit to you feels good, and the human brain is wired to seek out experiences that feel good, often regardless of the conscious ethics involved. The transformation begins when you recognize that you're caught in a feedback loop specifically designed to drain every drop of power from your being and transfer it to someone else. Every apology makes them stronger and you weaker. Every "I'm sorry" is a transaction where you lose and they gain. This isn't an equal exchange. It's an energetic vampirism that will continue as long as you allow it. If you've noticed that certain people in your life seem consistently dissatisfied, no matter how many times you apologize to them, write "I see the hunger now" in the comments below. What makes this pattern particularly insidious is that this hunger for your submission is never satisfied, never. You cannot apologize deeply enough, frequently enough, or sincerely enough to finally fill their need for dominance, because satisfaction would mean the end of the supply, and addicts never want their supply to end. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing one of the most disturbing aspects of this dynamic. People you frequently apologize to will actually begin to manufacture reasons for you to apologize. They become hypersensitive to everything you do, finding offense in places where none actually exists. Why? Because they're unconsciously chasing that feeling of dominance, that rush of superiority that your apologies provide. This isn't a conscious process. These people aren't sitting at home twirling their mustaches and plotting ways to extract more apologies from you. The mechanism works at a much deeper level of human psychology. Their perception literally shifts to see your actions through an increasingly critical lens, because their brain has been rewired to seek opportunities for that dopamine reward your submission provides. The breakthrough moment in this journey of self-discovery comes when you recognize a pattern that's been hiding in plain sight. The people you apologize to most frequently become the people who are most frequently offended by you. This isn't coincidence. It's conditioning in its purest form. You've trained their brain that being upset with you leads to the reward of your submission. So, their brain, efficient system that it is, creates more opportunities for that reward. Think about it in your own life. Who demands the most apologies from you? And how did that relationship evolve over time? Chances are, it began with one apology that seemed reasonable enough, but then another was required, and another, until apologizing became the primary currency of your relationship with them, a currency that only flows in one direction. The catalyst for transformation is recognizing that you're caught in a feedback loop, where every apology makes them stronger and you weaker. It's an energetic transfer where your power diminishes as theirs grows. Each "I'm sorry" reinforces their position above you in the invisible hierarchy that exists in every relationship. Each submission cements your role as the subordinate, the lesser, the one who needs to constantly atone. Machiavelli observed this centuries ago when he wrote, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." The revelation here is that you've been deceiving yourself. You've believed that your apologies are solving problems, restoring harmony, building bridges, when in reality they've been creating dependencies, building addictions, and establishing power dynamics that will haunt you for as long as you allow them to exist. The only path to freedom is to disrupt this cycle completely. Stop providing the supply. Stop feeding the addiction. Yes, they'll escalate at first. All addicts do when their supply is threatened. But eventually they'll be forced to relate to you on equal terms or not at all. Either outcome is preferable to the slow erosion of your dignity through constant unnecessary apologies. If you've been trapped in this kind of relationship and are ready to break the pattern, write "I break the cycle" in the comments below. Your apologies don't just affect your current interactions. They create a permanent record that follows you long after the words have left your mouth. Let's examine how this record shapes others' perception of you. This insatiable hunger creates one of the most destructive patterns in human relationships: escalation. What begins as a single apology for a legitimate mistake gradually transforms into an expectation of constant contrition. They'll keep raising the bar of what requires your submission. One apology becomes two, becomes five, becomes a lifestyle where you're essentially apologizing for your very existence. Watch the progression in your own relationships. Perhaps it began reasonably enough. You apologized for something specific that warranted acknowledgement. But notice how the threshold for what requires an apology has steadily lowered over time. Now you're apologizing for your tone, for your facial expression, for taking too long to respond to a text, for having an opinion that differs from theirs, for needing space, for setting a boundary. The enlightenment comes when you realize this isn't happening randomly. It's a predictable evolution in relationships where apologies have become the primary currency. The bar will always lower because the addiction requires more frequent hits to maintain the same level of satisfaction. What once required a major transgression now requires merely existing in a way that doesn't center their preferences. This revelation challenges the foundation of what we've been taught. About harmony in relationships, you think you're maintaining peace by apologizing. You believe you're preserving connections by submitting. You've convinced yourself you're being the mature one by backing down. But the uncomfortable truth is that you're not creating peace. You're feeding a monster, and this monster grows bigger, hungrier, and more demanding with every apology you offer. Eventually, this creature you've nurtured through your submissions becomes so large that it consumes your relationship entirely. Nothing you do is ever enough. No apology is ever sufficient. No amount of contrition ever satisfies. Because the monster isn't interested in resolution, it's interested in dominance. It doesn't want your apology, it wants your power. The watershed moment in this journey is recognizing that this pattern will never self-correct. The hunger will never spontaneously dissipate. The escalation will never naturally reverse. The monster will never voluntarily shrink. These dynamics will continue, intensifying, accelerating, expanding for exactly as long as you continue to feed them with your apologies. Machiavelli's wisdom becomes particularly relevant here. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Your past apologies were perhaps given with good intentions, with hopes of harmony, with desires for connection. But breaking this pattern, refusing to continue feeding the monster, is the necessity of your present. If you want any hope of authentic relationship in your future, the decision to stop apologizing unnecessarily isn't selfish, it's salvific. It's not cruel, it's clarifying. It doesn't destroy genuine connection. It creates the only conditions under which real connection is possible: equality, mutual respect, and balanced power. If you recognize this escalation pattern in your own relationships, write "I starve the monster" in the comments below. Now, I want to go even deeper into another devastating aspect of constant apologizing: the permanent record you're creating. Your apologies don't just disappear into thin air after you speak them. They become indelible entries in a record that will be used against you. Perhaps the cruelest twist in this entire dynamic is what happens when the relationship finally reaches its breaking point. After months or years of you apologizing constantly, after countless submissions, after endless efforts to make things work through your own self-diminishment, the relationship collapses anyway. And here comes the ultimate perversion. They blame you for the failure. You're always apologizing. You clearly have so many problems. I can't deal with someone who is constantly messing up. This devastating reversal is the final insult in a long journey of power surrender. They use the very pattern you created through your submission as evidence that you're the broken one. Your constant apologies become proof of your fundamental flaws rather than what they actually were: attempts to maintain peace at your own expense. The revelation here transforms your entire understanding of relationship dynamics. The pattern you thought was helping, your willingness to take responsibility, to apologize, to smooth things over, has actually been building the case against you all along. You've been diligently documenting your own failures through your apologies, creating a narrative that will ultimately be used to justify your abandonment. Machiavelli's insights on human nature become particularly relevant when he observed, men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. The profound awakening here is recognizing that you've been deceiving yourself. You've convinced yourself that your apologies were solving problems, healing wounds, building bridges, when in reality, they've been creating dependencies, establishing addictions, and cementing power dynamics that inevitably lead to your own diminishment. This self-deception is perhaps the most dangerous aspect of the entire pattern because it keeps you trapped in a cycle that only benefits others at your expense. The enlightenment comes when you finally confront this uncomfortable truth. Your apologies aren't working. They never were. They were merely temporary bandages over power imbalances that continue to fester beneath the surface. The breakthrough insight that changes everything is this: the only way to break this cycle is to stop feeding it completely. Not to apologize less frequently or with more conditions, but to fundamentally transform your relationship to the act of apologizing itself. You must let others experience what it's like when you don't apologize. Let them go through the withdrawal process that all addicts face when their supply is suddenly cut off. Yes, they'll escalate initially. Yes, they'll get angry. Yes, they'll try everything in their power to get you back into the established pattern, because addicts fight hard when you take away their drug of choice. But you're not responsible for their addiction. You're only responsible for stopping your role as the supplier of their dopamine hits through your submission. The journey toward reclaiming your power isn't easy, but it's necessary. It's not about becoming heartless or refusing accountability for genuine mistakes. It's about recognizing the profound difference between strategic acknowledgement and habitual self-diminishment, and choosing the path that preserves your dignity. If you've experienced this blame reversal after years of apologizing, write "I see the trap now" in the comments below. Your apologies don't just affect how others see you, they create permanent entries in everyone's memory that fundamentally shape your identity in their eyes. Let's examine how human memory works and why your apologies might be writing the worst possible story about who you are. Every time you say, "I'm sorry," you're not just speaking words that vanish into the air. You're creating a permanent file in everyone's memory. And that file has a very specific title: Evidence of Failure. This permanent record doesn't fade with time. It becomes carved into stone, an indelible mark on how others perceive your fundamental identity. The revelation that transforms everything is understanding how human memory actually works. Our brains don't record events like security cameras, capturing objective reality with perfect accuracy. Instead, they create narratives, stories that make sense of our experiences. And your apologies are writing the worst possible story about who you are as a character in their narrative. Consider what happens when you apologize once for being late to a meeting. The memory created in others' minds isn't simply they apologized for being late one time. The memory becomes they're unreliable. You apologize for a minor error in your work. The memory isn't they acknowledged a small mistake. It becomes they're incompetent. You apologize for saying something that someone misinterpreted. The memory isn't they were considerate of my feelings. It becomes they're problematic. Each apology becomes a data point in their mental database about you. And humans are pattern recognition machines by nature. We take isolated data points and connect them to create meaning. The pattern your apologies create is devastatingly simple. This person is consistently failing. Now, here's where the injustice of this dynamic becomes truly apparent. Someone else in your workplace might be late 10 times and never apologize once. What pattern do others see in them? They're busy, they're important, they have a lot going on, their time is valuable. You apologized once, they never apologized, yet you're the unreliable one, and they're the important one. That's the twisted logic of human perception when shaped by apologies. The enlightenment comes when you realize this isn't happening because people are malicious. It's happening because of how our brains naturally process and store information, particularly emotionally charged information. And few things are more emotionally charged than someone's submission to you. The truth behind the scenes of this psychological process is that these memories don't stay separate in people's minds. They combine, they merge, they create a compound narrative that's greater than the sum of its parts. Your apology for being late combines with Your apology for a work error combines with your apology for something you said. Suddenly, you're not just someone who made three separate, unrelated mistakes. You're the person who is always apologizing. And someone who is always apologizing must, by definition, be someone who is always doing something wrong. This becomes your brand, your identity, the filter through which every action you take is interpreted. Your journey toward reclaiming your power starts with recognizing that your apologies aren't isolated events. They're threads in a tapestry that's creating your entire image in others' minds. If you've noticed that you seem to be perpetually stuck in a role as the one who messes up, despite your accomplishments, write, "I rewrite my story now," in the comments below. What makes this record particularly devastating is how it creates a confirmation bias that shapes all future interactions. Do something well, and they think they're trying to make up for all their mistakes. Do something neutral, and they think they'll probably mess it up eventually. Do something questionable, and they think, see, there they go again. The most insidious aspect of this permanent record is how it compounds over time. Your individual apologies for small, completely unrelated things don't stay separate in people's minds. They merge together, like tributaries flowing into a single powerful river that reshapes the entire landscape of how you're perceived. What began as discrete events, an apology for being late, an apology for a typo in an email, an apology for speaking too softly, combines to create a massive overarching identity, the person who always messes up. This becomes your brand, your calling card, your primary identifier in social and professional settings. Not your accomplishments, not your strengths, not your unique contributions, but your tendency to apologize, which gets translated in everyone's mind to your tendency to fail. The revelation that transforms your understanding is recognizing that these unrelated incidents would never have combined in people's minds if you hadn't connected them yourself through the common thread of apology. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the confirmation bias trap your apologies have created. Once people have established this mental file on you, this story about who you are, everything you do gets filtered through this narrative lens. This is basic human psychology. We see what we expect to see, not necessarily what's actually there. When you achieve something remarkable, they don't see success. They see someone trying to compensate for their inherent flaws. When you perform adequately, they don't see competence. They see someone who will eventually revert to their true nature of inadequacy. And when you make even the smallest mistake, they don't see a normal human error. They see confirmation of the fundamental truth they knew all along. You're the person who messes up. Your apologies have created a perfect confirmation bias loop, where everything you do, regardless of its actual quality or impact, reinforces the narrative that you're problematic. The mindset shift required to break free from this trap is substantial because you're fighting not just against others' perceptions, but against a fundamental mechanism of how human cognition works. Perhaps the most devastating aspect of this dynamic is the permanence of the brand you've created. Years later, long after you've stopped apologizing, long after you've improved your skills, long after you've transformed your life in meaningful ways, people will still remember you primarily as that person who was always apologizing. They won't remember what you apologized for. Those details fade quickly. They'll just remember the feeling of you constantly submitting, constantly diminishing yourself, constantly reinforcing your position at the bottom of whatever hierarchy existed between you. Breaking free from this permanent brand requires more than just stopping your apologies today. It requires a complete reimagining of how you present yourself to the world, a fundamental transformation in how you occupy space, express opinions, and navigate conflict. It requires the courage to let people be uncomfortable with the new you, because they will be. The image you've built through years of apologies won't dissolve overnight. People will resist your evolution because it disrupts the comfortable narrative they've constructed about who you are. If you've been struggling to change how others perceive you despite significant personal growth, write, "I transcend their memory" in the comments below. This permanent record of failure isn't just damaging to your reputation. It turns you into a magnet for blame whenever anything goes wrong in your vicinity. Let me explain how this happens. You need to understand something fundamental about human psychology that will transform how you navigate social dynamics forever. People are always looking for somewhere to place blame. When things go wrong, everyone's brain automatically starts scanning for a target, and your pattern of apologies has painted a giant bullseye on your back. Here's how this blame magnet effect works. The moment you establish yourself as someone who readily accepts responsibility, someone who apologizes quickly and frequently, you unknowingly volunteer to become everyone's scapegoat. You've essentially raised your hand and said, "I'm the one you can blame when things go wrong." And people will take you up on that offer relentlessly. The revelation that changes everything is recognizing what happens in group situations when something goes wrong. Everyone's eyes will instinctively turn to you, not necessarily because they genuinely believe you caused the problem, but because you're the safe target, the reliable target, the target who won't fight back because you're too busy apologizing. You've made yourself the path of least resistance for blame. And blame, like water, always flows down the easiest path. Meanwhile, others have learned the opposite lesson through their journey of self-preservation. They've discovered that if they never apologize, they're rarely blamed. If they never admit fault, people assume they're not at fault. So when problems arise, they stay silent. They let the room fill with uncomfortable tension. They wait for someone to break that silence. And who inevitably does? You, with an apology, even if you had nothing to do with the situation. You think you're being helpful. You believe you're moving things forward. You assume you're resolving the tension. But what you're actually doing is volunteering to be executed for crimes you didn't commit. Your pattern of taking responsibility has created an entirely new identity for you: professional scapegoat. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing the prison these expectations create around you. The more consistently you take blame, the more you're expected to take it in the future. Your pattern of apologizing creates an expectation that you'll always apologize. So when you don't, when you finally stand up and say, "This wasn't my fault," people get confused, then irritated, then angry. Why aren't you apologizing? You're the one who usually apologizes. What's different now? Are you saying this isn't your fault? Yes, that's exactly what you're saying. But good luck convincing them, because you've spent so long being the designated blame taker that any attempt to stop is seen as shirking responsibility rather than claiming your rightful innocence. This expectation prison is perhaps the most suffocating aspect of the entire dynamic. You've built a cell with the bars of your own apologies, and now everyone expects you to stay locked inside it. The people around you have become dependent on your willingness to be blamed. It makes their lives easier. It gives them someone to point at when things go wrong. It absolves them of having to look at their own contributions to problems. The transformation begins when you recognize that strategic silence is actually your most powerful response in many situations. When something goes wrong, your first instinct is to fill the awkward space with an apology, to smooth things over, to make everyone comfortable. But that discomfort, that awkwardness, that tension, that's not yours to fix. Let it sit. Let others squirm in it. Let them experience what it feels like when there's no easy target apologizing to make it all go away. If you found yourself consistently becoming the scapegoat in work or personal situations, write "I deflect blame" in the comments below. Silence is a mirror. When you stay silent instead of apologizing, people are forced to look at themselves, to examine their own role, to sit with their own discomfort. And most people cannot handle that reflection. They'll try to make you fill the silence. They'll pressure you to apologize. They'll create more tension to force your submission. The transformation begins when you hold your ground regardless. Let the silence expand. Let it become unbearable for them, not for you. Eventually, someone else will speak. Someone else will take responsibility. Someone else will apologize. Or better yet, the silence will force everyone to move forward without needing an apology at all. The wisdom Machiavelli offered centuries ago remains strikingly relevant. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The fool apologizes constantly, gradually surrendering their power piece by piece until they finally realize, too late, that it has destroyed them. Only then do they stop, when there's almost nothing left to save. The wise person, however, understands from the beginning that strategic silence holds more power than desperate apologies. They don't need to learn this lesson through years of diminishment. They recognize the trap before stepping into it. Your journey of transformation can begin right now, at this moment, with a simple but profound decision. You stand at a crossroads of identity. Will you continue apologizing your way through life, shrinking smaller every day, giving away your power word by word until there's nothing left of you? Or will you stand up right now and decide that you're done? Done submitting. Done apologizing for existing. Done letting others feed on your power like parasites draining a host. This decision isn't just about words. It's about your entire approach to existence. It's about whether you believe, at your core, that you deserve to occupy space in this world without constant justification. The mindset shift required is substantial because it challenges years of conditioning, perhaps decades of being told that your worth depends on how small you can make yourself to accommodate others. Machiavelli understood something fundamental that we've forgotten in our era of forced niceness. Life is a battlefield, not always a physical one, but unquestionably a battlefield of power, respect, and positioning. And on a battlefield, those who constantly surrender don't survive, not physically, but psychologically, spiritually, existentially. Their essence gets consumed by those who understand the rules of engagement. This doesn't mean becoming cruel. It doesn't mean becoming heartless. It doesn't mean hurting others. It simply means recognizing that your constant apologies are hurting you, diminishing you, erasing you from your own life narrative. The revelation that changes everything is recognizing that standing firm isn't aggression. It's self-preservation in its most basic form. In a world full of people trying to make you smaller, refusing to shrink is nothing short of revolutionary. Standing tall when everyone expects you to bow is the purest expression of power. Speaking without apology when others demand your submission is the ultimate freedom. This isn't arrogance, it's authenticity. It's not selfishness. It's self-respect in its most essential form. From this moment forward, before those two words, "I'm sorry," leave your mouth. Pause for just a moment. Ask yourself, is this apology necessary? Or is this just me surrendering power out of habit? Most of the time, you'll realize the apology isn't necessary. What's necessary is your strength, your boundaries, your refusal to be the designated apologizer anymore. If this perspective has awakened something dormant inside you, write, "I never apologize again," in the comments below. When acknowledgement is truly needed, there's a profound difference in how you can deliver it. There's a way to address situations without diminishing yourself, without surrendering your power, without inviting others to see you as perpetually failing. The brutal cost of apologies ends today, right here, right now, with the decision you make in this moment. Will you continue surrendering your power piece by piece, or will you reclaim what's rightfully yours? Remember, what I'm sharing isn't about becoming cruel or heartless. It's about discernment. It's about distinguishing between strategic acknowledgement and self-destruction through submission. When acknowledgement is truly warranted, give it briefly, clearly, and from a position of strength. This happened. Here's what's next. No graveling, no self-diminishment, just facts and forward movement. This transformation won't be easy. People have grown accustomed to your apologies. They've built expectations around your submission. They've become dependent on your willingness to make yourself small so they can feel big. When you stop providing that service, they'll resist. They'll push back. They'll try to force you back into the role you've played for so long. Stand firm. Your dignity is worth the temporary discomfort. Your power is worth the momentary tension. Your presence in this world deserves to be felt without constant justification. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, hit that like button right now. It's a small action that says, I recognize this truth in my own life. And if you're serious about reclaiming your power, write "power reclaimed" in the comments below. I read them all, and I want to know who's on this journey of transformation with me. This channel is dedicated to revealing the uncomfortable truths that actually liberate you, not the comfortable lies that keep you small. If that's the kind of insight you want more of in your life, subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next video in this series goes even deeper into the hidden psychology of influence that most people never recognize. There's a video right here that builds perfectly on what we've discussed today. Click it and continue this journey with me, because in a world that profits from your self-doubt, standing tall is the ultimate act of rebellion. I'll see you in the next one.